What's going on, guys? My name is Lieben, and today I'm going to be working on my blue 350Z. So what I'm going to be doing today is actually replacing the slave cylinder for the clutch. One of the mornings when I turned the car on and actually tried to move, I noticed that my clutch would go all the way down to the ground and then it wouldn't come back up, and I wouldn't be able to put it into gear. Thankfully, it was in my parking space outside, so it wasn't like in the middle of the street where I was going to be stranded. So what I had to do is go ahead and turn it off, put it into gear, and that's how I was able to bring it into the garage. So here we have the slave cylinder. Now when I go under, you guys will be able to see. One of the reasons why I think it might have failed, probably due to old age, and also because this dust boot right here, it doesn't have it, the one that's on it right now. So more than likely a bunch of dirt got into it, also causing it to fail probably. As well as I noticed that the transmission, the fork, doesn't have its dust boot either, which is right here. This is what I was waiting on. I had received this part already, but I didn't know that I needed that too, so I went ahead and ordered it, and now that it's here I can start installing the slave cylinder. I also got the master cylinder because I was reading online, most of the time they recommend once you change one to change both of them. I was gonna go ahead and do that, but then I noticed that I really don't have that much space in the garage to go ahead and open up the door and get underneath the dash to go ahead and kind of unbolt it from that side. So what I'm deciding to do is I'm gonna go ahead and risk it and just install the slave cylinder. Hopefully that fixes it, and then if the master cylinder ever goes out, well then I'll have to fix that whenever that time comes. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go underneath the car right now and show you guys where the slave cylinder is located at. And from what I've seen, it's pretty straightforward on how to take it off. It's like probably like 3 bolts. Okay, so here we are underneath the car, and probably one of the first thing you guys will notice is that there's a lot of oil down here. It's pretty much covered in oil, and that is because the engine is actually leaking some oil. I've actually had this engine replaced once before. I took it to the mechanic and had them replace it, and they gave me an engine that wasn't the best, but I mean I already had it installed and I had to pay for it, so basically I'm just gonna run this one down to the ground and then probably go ahead and get another one. But yeah, here is the slave cylinder right here. There's where I said that it doesn't have this boot right there, so probably a lot of debris is going into there. And also this boot right here for the transmission and the fork, there's not one either. Hopefully I got the right one. I haven't even looked at the boot that I got, but apparently that fork along the years was changed into a different one, so not all of the dust boots are for all of the 350s. You kind of need to know which fork you have. Like I said, hopefully I got the right one. If not, I'll probably just go ahead and find a way to make it still work. But yeah, here you will see that there are 3 bolts, and actually I had tried doing this once, bleeding it already. These cars are notorious for being difficult to bleed. I've seen a bunch of videos. I thought I could do it by myself. I purchased this, like, I guess it was like a pump that kind of bleeds the system. It's meant for the brakes, but I thought I could have used for the clutch as well, but it didn't work. So after I install a new one, I'll see how I can go about trying to bleed the system. From what I can tell, these 2 right here are the main ones that are holding it in onto the actual transmission. That one is to connect the hose, and then that little small right there is if I were to bleed it. So yeah, it shouldn't take long at all to go ahead and take off 3 bolts. And from what I could tell, they're all 12 millimeters. This one actually fit pretty snug. When I put the 12 millimeter on this one, it was a bit of kind of wiggle room on there, so maybe they're not exactly 12, but I'll go ahead and probably still use that one. Alright, so I have my 12 millimeter in my ratchet right here, and I'll go ahead and disconnect the hose first. Now I would recommend having a bucket underneath in case yours does leak. I've already taken it off and I know that nothing comes out of the line. I don't have one underneath, but just keep that in mind. Actually, for the bottom one, I couldn't get the wrench to fit, so I couldn't get the ratchet to fit, so I'll use a wrench. And just keep in mind, there's a washer on each side of the bolt, so just in case they fall down when you take it off. On this one, I know one side of it's actually stuck. That side is stuck on there, but this one did fall down, so just keep that one where you won't lose it. And move the line off to the side. Now I'll go ahead and take the 2 on top off. And that one's loose. Move on to the next one. Alright, and just like that, the part is removed. So thankfully, removing the slave cylinder is actually one of the easiest parts you can replace on this car, which is a good thing. Honestly, this has taken me less than 5 minutes to be able to take all this off. And here inside you can see again, like I said, that dust boot wasn't on there. And yeah, it looks pretty dirty in there actually. Bunch of rocks and stuff like that, little bits of grime. So now that it is off, before I go ahead and put the other one, the new one in, I want to go ahead and see if the dust boot will fit over that fork. Alright, so I have the dust boot cover right here, and I also decided it'd probably be smart to put some gloves on because of how oily and dirty it is down here. But now if I focus it over to where the fork is, right there, I'll be honest, I don't know exactly in which way this one goes. So I guess we'll just have to figure it out with trial and error. From what it looks like, the fork is closer to this side. So I'm going to go ahead and also put it with the opening closer to the left as well. Hopefully I'm able to actually get this to go in. So it's about halfway in, so I'm going to see if I can get something, maybe like a plastic trim remover piece or something, so that I can go ahead and push, hopefully you guys can see, but push the remaining part of the dust boot, the inner part, inside of the transmission. Well guys, and there you have it. I went ahead and finally installed the dust cover. It did take me quite a bit of time. What I kept on running into was that on this side I couldn't see what the lip, so I was having a hard time actually pushing it into it. So then I had to take it off a couple of times, and then eventually what helped was starting from this end and kind of working on this end that I couldn't see first, and then moving along down here where it was a lot easier to see, and I could actually fit the tool in a lot easier, so I can go ahead and push it in. So now I believe I have it in the right orientation. If you guys are watching this, that means I didn't mess up the fork and everything is good, so that's a good thing. It seemed like that was the best place. I actually did try to put it the other way and then it just wouldn't center, so I'm pretty confident this is the right way to put it on. But like I said, if it's not, well then hopefully it doesn't damage anything else. I mean, if anything, I feel like it would just rip the boot if I put it in the wrong way, which hopefully it doesn't. But now that it's installed, I can actually go ahead and put the new slave cylinder back on. Alright, so here is the new slave cylinder, and right here is the pin. So from what I can tell in the old one, this pointy end, or I guess it's a little bit more pointier, actually is the piece that goes into the cylinder, and then this end right here is the one that's going to push up against the fork. So what I didn't see, or I don't know 100%, is if it needs some grease before going in. I would believe so. If it's going to be a part that keeps on sliding in and out, I would think it would need at least some grease. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit on it just to make it easier when it's being pushed in and out, so it doesn't get caught or like rip this boot right here. Okay, here I have it now fully assembled. Hopefully you guys can see it does have a little bit of oil. I mean, not oil, it has a little bit of grease along with the rest of it that's inside. Hopefully that just makes it go ahead, slide in and out a lot easier. And now we can go ahead and actually install it to the transmission. And from what it looks like, you're actually gonna have to go ahead and kind of push it in a little bit, because like that extended, it doesn't fit. So just compress it. And just like that, now it fits in there. Grab one of your bolts and screw it in. Then grab the other one. Go ahead and put that one in as well. Alright, and there we have it. So I went ahead and installed the hose back on, and I put the two bolts to actually hold it onto the transmission. I'm pretty sure they have torque specs for it. I didn't want to really take the time to look them up, so I just went ahead and tightened them down until they were snug, and I was confident that they weren't going to come loose with the vibration of the car when it's moving. So now that that's installed, basically all that's left is making sure that there isn't any air in the system. So basically just bleeding it. I'm gonna see if I can do it by myself. And if not, I would have to wait until someone is here with me so that they can press on the pedal while I open and close the valve. But yeah, but for the install part, that is pretty much it. Like I said, it was pretty simple and straightforward. Honestly, the part that took me a while, longer than I thought, was actually putting the boot on. But I mean, even that wasn't that bad. But most of you will probably already have that on and would just need to replace the cylinder. And like I said, it was pretty straightforward. And actually, before I start pumping on the clutch pedal, I have to make sure this is actually closed, because it actually looks like they put the valves, kind of left it open when they packaged it. And if it's the same as the other one, it should be an 8mm, and it is. Never mind, it actually was tight. There was just a bunch of threads left over on the bleeder valve. And actually, a good tip is probably not to lose this little cap right here. That would prevent some debris, because this is pointing towards the floor. It prevents debris and mud to clog up the valve. So if you ever need to do this again, you don't have to worry about having to unclog it. So I gotta make sure I don't lose it either. Alright, so from what I saw on the service manual for these cars, what you want to do is go ahead and actually pump the clutch. And actually, you guys can see right now it's all the way to the ground too. Pump the clutch 5 times, and after the 5th time, go ahead and push it all the way down to the floor. And as someone is holding it down onto the floor, then you go ahead and open up the valve to let the air out, and then close it, and then the person can go ahead and remove their foot from the clutch. Because I don't have anyone with me right now, what I'm going to go ahead and try to do is find something heavy enough so that I can go ahead and pump the clutch, and then after the 5th time, go ahead and place something over the clutch to hopefully hold it down while I go underneath the car and actually open up the valve and then close it and then remove the object that I have. But as of right now, I haven't found anything that's small enough but at the same time heavy enough so that I can put on there. So let me go ahead and find something. Alright, so I went ahead and found a brick. So hopefully this is heavy enough that once I depress the clutch, it will actually go ahead and stay down. So if we go right here, I'm going to have to go ahead and do it manually by hand at first, because since it stays, I have to go ahead and pull it back. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now for this last one, go ahead and put the brick on here. And that is just in case once I release the air, if it wants to pop out, hopefully it's heavy enough to hold it down. So now I'm going to have to go down and release the valve. So what I've gone ahead and done is I went ahead and attached a hose. So hopefully when the fluid starts leaking, I can go ahead and have it actually fall down onto this bucket right here. So now I'll go ahead and loosen it up, and hopefully we see some oil or some fluid come down. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and take the hose off because it doesn't seem to want to actually stay on there. And hopefully I don't get covered in brake oil, brake fluid. So I went ahead and unscrewed it and nothing has came off. But that could also be because since the line and this doesn't have any oil right now, it's probably still coming down. So I'm going to go ahead and close it up and give it a few more pumps. Hopefully then it comes down. And another thing I need to do is actually pay attention to the fluid level on top. I don't want it to go too low or else that kind of defeats the purpose, because then it's just going to be getting more oil from up top. And actually I had previously opened the cap to this oil here. So let's see. Oh yeah, it definitely still has enough fluid in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and try this a few times, and then I will get back to you guys and let you guys know if this actually worked or if I have to wait for someone else to come and help me out. Alright guys, so believe it or not, it actually took me almost about a week to be able to bleed the car. As you guys can see, now it's my dad's car that's in here. I went ahead and took my 350Z out, and now I'm basically going to explain why it took so long to be able to bleed the car. Mainly it was because I didn't know what the issue was. So the things that I tried out was, first, initially before I started this, I thought I was going to be able to use this bleeder kit to go ahead and bleed it. You just go ahead and connect it to the compressor, and it's like a power bleeder. I went ahead and attached it to the compressor and then down to the bleeder valve, but then when I would turn it on, you would just squeeze right there. Nothing would come out. It would be just pure air. So that obviously didn't work at all. So then what I went ahead and moved on to was actually like a handheld little vacuum kit right here. So now this one initially started working. It pushed out a little bit of fluid, but at the end it came to the same issue as this one, where I was still going ahead and pumping the clutch pedal, but nothing would come out. Oh, and I did forget to mention, the first thing that I did try was I went ahead and pumped the clutch brake, like I want to say over 100 times, trying to build pressure, and then I would go down and try to crack the bleeder valve, but nothing would come out either. I then got help from my father. He also started pumping the clutch to see if I was just taking too long to get down there and it would lose pressure, but even with him, nothing would come out. So then the last method that I saw on YouTube was some people were actually using this pump right here to try to head and actually force fluid in from the bleeder valve, forcing air to come out through the fluid reservoir. So I went ahead and tried doing that. I filled this up with brake fluid, then I was pumping this right here, trying to push the fluid into the bleeder valve so that the air would come out of the reservoir. That obviously didn't work either. I would pump it and then nothing would go in through the tip right here. It would just start leaking right there. So at that point I was more convinced that there was some sort of blockage in the lines that wasn't allowing the fluid to go through. Right here you can see I've showed this already. It's the slave cylinder. And yeah, it was pretty bad, so I mean I had to replace that too. But what I was also thinking was that maybe the master cylinder was also bad. I mean, I wasn't too sure about that. Like I said, I thought it was more likely gonna be a line that was blocked or whatever. But what I ended up doing actually was going ahead and actually replacing the master cylinder. There are two reasons why I didn't actually show me taking this off. One of them was because I wasn't 100% sure that this was the issue. But most importantly, like I said, it took almost a week for me to figure this out. I was trying to use all these methods and different variations of these methods, thinking that that was the only way to take the air out. But then I finally found a video online about, actually, they call it bench bleeding. So what I went ahead and did was I actually had the other master cylinder already when I ordered the new slave cylinder. So I was like, if I'm already taking this off, might as well go ahead and put the new one on. So what I ended up doing was taking off the master cylinder along with the line that goes right here that basically pulls in the fluid from the reservoir. I'll go ahead and show you guys in the car here in a little bit. From what I understand, what bench bleeding does, it creates a vacuum inside the master clutch cylinder and takes away all of the air by basically creating a loop in the system. So as you're drawing fluid from the reservoir through the hose that actually comes in the car, it'll start leaking out of here unless you have another hose that fits perfectly in here to go ahead and push the fluid back into the reservoir. So basically, let's say the reservoir is right here, the fluid will go in through this hose, and as you're pumping, it'll go through the system in the master cylinder, and then it'll pump out right here, where in the car it would go down through the line into the clutch, into the slave cylinder. But because it's not connected right here, instead I put a line so that the fluid would then go back up into the cylinder. Inside, you have to make sure it's actually submerged into the fluid to basically close off the system. And as you're pumping it, you'll see that as this is taking up fluid, well, the level on the reservoir will start going down, so you have to continue topping it off. And plus, once the fluid starts going into this line right here, well, it'll start going down too, so you just continue topping it off. And then basically, as you're pushing right here onto the slave cylinder, you'll see on the reservoir that there's going to be air bubbles, and that's going to be all of the air inside of the master cylinder, and in the line, that's going to be all the air that's coming out. So you just continue topping it off and pumping right here on the master cylinder until you don't see any more air bubbles, and that basically takes off all of the air inside of the system right here. So that's actually basically what I went ahead and did. Like I said, I was running out of ideas, so I thought, why not, let's just go ahead and do that. And I was really frustrated with the car already, which is why I decided just to focus on actually working on it and not really filming anything. But luckily, that is what ended up working. So I guess there was just so much air inside the clutch cylinder, the master cylinder, that it wasn't allowing any of the fluid to come down from the reservoir, which is why when I would try to use any of these other methods to try to suck down fluid through the bleeder valve, it wouldn't allow the air, wouldn't allow either the air or that this piece just completely did go out. It would be one or the other. Either there was so much air that fluid couldn't get down, or this wasn't doing what it was supposed to and no air was passing through either way. Because no matter how many times I attempted to pump the clutch pedal, it would always stick down to the floor and it would never build up any pressure. So that, I'm guessing that would mean that there was never any fluid going all the way down to the slave cylinder. But now I'll go ahead and go out to my car and show you guys exactly how this is set up inside the car. Okay, so I'm here in my car, and here on the driver's side is where the master cylinder and the reservoir is located. So basically what I went ahead and took off was the reservoir, this line right here, and the master cylinder. It's kind of dark, but it's all the way down there. So I went ahead and took all that off, and like I was saying when I was bench bleeding, instead of having that line connected that goes down into the slave cylinder, I went ahead and unscrewed that, and that's where I put the line, then fed it all the way back up to the reservoir again. So as it was going ahead and taking in fluid when I was pumping the master cylinder, it would push it out through here and basically, like I said, create a cycle to go ahead and push out all of the fluid. And if we see now right here, it has good level of fluid, it's not leaking or anything like that. And if we go inside, we will see that finally the clutch pedal is all the way up, and I can go ahead and push it. It's very stiff, but it will always come back. But yeah guys, this was supposed to be just a simple video of taking the slave cylinder out. It obviously got more complicated, as it usually does. But there are a ton of other videos also on YouTube that might be able to better explain it than I can. I was just basically recording how I was going about trying to do it, and it took longer than I thought. But yeah guys, if you guys liked this video or found it informative, please go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Repeat after me. Hakuna Matata.